You know, I told you over the last few months that Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's the top infectious disease doctor in the country, needs a security detail because of threats against him. And it's really a sort of glimpse, a peek behind the curtain into the problems that we have as a country here in the United States when the doctor trying to stop the pandemic and save people has so many Americans wanting to hurt him, furious with him, believing that he is trying to hurt Americans, targeting him as some kind of nefarious player in some bizarre amalgam of conspiracy theories involving Bill Gates and microchipping and RFID and all sorts of stuff. He needs security. That's utterly unconscionable. Think about how crazy it is that in most countries, a pandemic comes, everybody defers to the public health officials and to the doctors who specialize in infectious disease. Not in the U.S. In the U.S., the pandemic comes and such a large portion of the country is furious with the doctors that the doctors end up needing security to protect them from Americans. Let that sink in. Well, now it's even worse. It's not just Dr. Fauci who is at risk. Dr. Fauci admitted earlier this week that now his daughters need security to protect them because of the work that Dr. Fauci is doing. Dr. Fauci said he and his family have required continued security in the face of harassment and death threats because people are mad at what he is doing in terms of the coronavirus pandemic. Trump said we have 15 cases, which will be zero soon in March. People are mad at Dr. Fauci and threatening his family. A quote from a recent interview he did with CNN. Commenting on this, Dr. Fauci says, the unseemingly things that crises bring out in the world. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm quoting Dr. Fauci. The unseemingly things that crises bring out in the world. It brings out the best of people and the worst of people, and getting death threats to my family and harassing my daughters to the point where I have to get security. It's amazing. I wouldn't have imagined in my wildest dreams that people who object to things that are pure public health principles are so set against it and don't like what you say and I say, namely in the world of science, that they actually threaten you. I mean, that to me is just strange. Now, what's really funny here is that Dr. Fauci during this interview refers to there being a degree of anti-science sentiment in the United States. That is quite the understatement. Half the country, according to multiple polls, doesn't even plan to get the coronavirus vaccine if and when it is available to them. But this is a bigger issue. This anti-intellectualism that underlies all of this has been growing for a long time. If you go back and read some of my favorite authors, like the work of Carl Sagan from decades ago, if you look at what Isaac Asimov wrote decades ago, they saw it coming. They've been sounding the alarm about not sort of benign anti-intellectualism and anti-science and rejection of science in the United States. They have been sounding the alarm about the real world impact that it was having and could potentially have significantly more of. They were completely correct. And for all of these folks who talk about, as I mentioned yesterday, Trump derangement syndrome, which is just a term to stymie debate, we, if anything, have been not alarmist enough about this issue of rejection of science, anti-intellectualism, and also pseudo-intellectualism, which presents its own set of risks that I've previously discussed. Instead of revering our doctors and our scientists, they've become enemies for, would you say it's for 20, 30, 40% of the country? Imagine threatening someone for trying to help the American people. Imagine threatening the children of someone trying to help the American people. And almost every day, Americans find new, novel ways to make the United States a laughingstock and a global embarrassment. And this is, in a sense, as I mentioned, when I mentioned Carl Sagan and Isaac Asimov, this was predicted. This is what happens after, on the one hand, decades of underfunding schools and not prioritizing understanding science and critical thinking and epistemology. And you combine that with the political party, the Republican Party, that benefits from, that raises money on the basis of rejecting science and also religiously based reactionary ideas, although that's not at the core of what we're seeing now with the virus necessarily. There are more components. I'm being overly simplistic, but those are two big, important pieces of the analysis. Imagine what it's like for Dr. Fauci day to day, going to work, trying to deal with a 100-year pandemic, seeing other countries successfully do it, and knowing that not only are we failing because of the president, but that the president is a huge part of why a large portion of the country hates Dr. Fauci, some to the point that they would like to see him dead. Redoubling my sentiments from an earlier segment, we owe the world an explanation and an apology. And by the way, if Trump wanted to stop this, if Donald Trump spent a week saying, leave Dr. Fauci alone, I don't want to hear anything about anybody going after Dr. Fauci or threatening his family. His interest is the health of the American people. If Trump did that, 95, 98, 99% of this would stop. But instead, Trump is actually part of the problem rather than the solution. Imagine being a health expert in the medical field and having death threats hurled at you and your family for trying to protect the public, and having the president of the United States actually foment that treatment rather than tell people to stop and to cut it out, for lack of a better term. It's bad. Really, really bad. One of our sponsors is privacy.com. They're giving you $5 when you sign up for their completely free service at privacy.com/Pakman. I've been using Privacy for a little over a year now. You've heard me talk about it before. It's a lifesaver, and here's how it works. Takes just a couple of minutes to set up. Anytime you buy something online or on the phone, instead of actually using your real credit card number, the Privacy app and the browser plugin let you give each company a randomized virtual credit card number that you create out of thin air. It'll even autofill the card number with one click. And the payment is taken out of your checking account without the merchant ever knowing your real information. So this allows you to keep your banking information secure, but also to take control of your finances. You can create up to 12 of these virtual credit cards a month. You can set spending limits. You can freeze them. You can delete them anytime you want. So when you do this, it means you're not going to be charged when you don't want to be, because you can destroy the virtual card number right after using it, which, for instance, I love using free trials because I know I won't be charged when the trial is over if I use a virtual credit card number. You're keeping your identity private by not telling companies who you are. You're keeping your bank or credit card info protected against data breaches and identity theft, and it's free. There's no catch whatsoever. But if you want, Privacy also offers a $10 a month plan that gives you 1% cash back and lets you create 36 credit cards a month, and a $25 a month plan tailored more for small businesses where you can create 60 card numbers a month and much more. But definitely go ahead and at least get started with the free plan. You'll protect your financial info. Companies can't charge you unexpectedly. And like I said, you'll get $5 to spend when you sign up at privacy.com/Pakman.